Yeah, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Microsoft Partner Update session, Elevate Your Customer Security. We have three super interesting topics for the whole day. You see, there is this morning we are talking about Defender for IoT. The afternoon there are two sessions about Defender for Threat Intelligence and External Attack Surface Management. This is the so-called Risk IQ acquisition we have done last year. And the other session, the afternoon, is about Entra Permissions Management based on the recent CloudNox acquisition. My name is Frank Bunn. I will be your host for today. I will cover the session this morning. Later on, my colleague Samba Koita will support me in the afternoon. My role is Senior Strategy Manager in the Security Partner Development Team. Also, my technical colleague Samba is in the same team, and we're all supported by a lot of subject matter experts from the product group and from other teams at Microsoft. The agenda looks like the following. We have a 3-hour session about Defender for IoT in the morning. Then we do a 1-hour lunch break. Then we have a 1.5-hour session about the Defender for Threat Intelligence and the Enterprise Attack Surface Management, followed by a 15-minute break, and then we have Entra Permissions Management at the end. Before I go into the details on Defender for IoT, let me do some housekeeping. That is important. If there are any questions, please use the chat and type in your questions. My colleagues and subject matter experts, you see this colleagues here for the morning session, will try the best to answer the questions. The sessions will be recorded, of course. It will be broadcasted through Microsoft Teams, and the recording will be available normally 7 to maximum 10 hours after the sessions have finished. If you have joined without registration by just getting the link from your colleagues, please try to register still. I think you see the register link in the chat window. Otherwise, we cannot send you the recording and the content afterwards. And also thanks for adhering to the Microsoft Code of Conduct that is also posted in the chat window. So let's start with the first topic, Defender for IoT in the morning. And I'm really delighted to have a huge registration number. I think we have between 200 and 300 people who have registered. I see a lot of common attendee names who have joined previous session on Defender for IoT on the other topics. So that's why I like to let you know we are not starting from the really beginning. It's more an update session. So we will not explain what is OT security. But anyway, we are starting with a strategy and a vision session to set up the scene that you understand all the following presentation, the session in the meantime about the context. After I will kick off, my colleague Samba will speak about product updates on the OT security side. My colleague Yossi will have the larger slot, about 55 minutes. He will talk about the architecture, deployment, best practices, fine-tuning. That was also some feedback you gave us in the last time that you want to have a little bit more deeper dive, learning from best practices in project. Samba later on, after the 10 minutes break, will speak about what we call the Enterprise IoT, extend to visibility, and also the integration we have with Defender for Endpoint. Then I'm really looking for my colleague Ran Shalom, who is coming up with a really interesting topic. We call it DLS, Device Lifecycle Security, based on a new technology we recently released, which is a micro agent, which also brings us into a motion of IoT endpoint detection and response. And then we will close the morning session with an update on the partner programs, commercials, how we can work together, what is in for you, and so on and so on. So let me start with and kicking off with the strategy and vision. And I like to start here with coming from the name. You see the product name is Microsoft Defender for IoT. And this name, Defender for IoT, as this name was coming up about 2.5 years ago after the acquisition of CyberX, was a little bit confusing for a lot of people, because at this time we were mainly focusing on OT security, so industrial topics, SCADA systems, protecting SCADA systems, industrial control system. And a lot of people ask, hey, why you're calling the product Defender for IoT? Because what you're doing is mainly OT and not the typical what we understand about IoT. But I have to say, at this time, somebody in marketing or whoever was responsible for this product name had a vision already, because IoT is a really wide term and it includes a lot of topics. And so one of the main vision we have, and which comes really into life in this year because of recent announcement we have done, is really all IoT devices, whatever the IoT device or the special approach in a single solution. And this is why at this time, maybe 2 years too early, and we came up with this product name Defender for IoT. So in the meantime, and since summer, we really can say we have a solution that packs everything in. So we are supporting the classical OT, or also called industrial IoT devices, so the industrial control systems, SCADA systems. In August, we released the first version of the Enterprise IoT with a combination what we can do with Defender for Endpoint, where Defender for Endpoint can fit in based on the discovery engine in Defender for Endpoint. Everything in a single product, and this will be a main topic what we will talk about today. The second one is the strategy and about our solution principle, everything that we develop and do, or even making some strategic acquisition in this environment, is the integrated coverage approach. What does it mean? We were starting from a best-in-class agentless solution, so really easy to deploy, non-intrusive, as it says here, immediate results. But for a lot of use cases right now we see, especially in vertical solutions, we have expanded this agentless approach with an agent-based technology, and we call this a micro-agent. And the term micro-agent, I think, is a really good term, because putting in agents in an IoT environment has some special needs or requirements, because it can't be a big agent, it can't be really resource intensive. So that's why we have developed something that is really low on capacity that is needed, nevertheless really powerful. And this is the micro agent we were coming up with as part of our DLS strategy. You will hear a lot more about this really interesting approach by Ran later on. And also third-party sources as enrichment. So I guess Samba will speak about integration we have with Corelight when it comes to enterprise IoT. Really important is integration with threat intelligence, and this is also where we have done a really strategic acquisition, acquiring RiskIQ. So because we have a lot of threat intelligence now in-house that sits on top of the solution umbrella. And last not least, the unified experience, you see, embedded in the Microsoft ecosystem. Defender for IoT is part of the Microsoft Defender for Cloud big portfolio. I mentioned already we have tight integration with Microsoft Defender, 365 Defender. The Azure IoT is a gateway into the cloud. And really important, where we speak about as well, is the Microsoft Sentinel. Because Microsoft Sentinel enables something what we call the OT-enabled SOC, which becomes so important. And this is also, we are covering the convergence between IT and OT, which becomes really important, because a lot of our partners or our customers don't like to have two single solutions, an OT managed solution and an IT managed solution, or two separate teams. Maybe that is still the case today, but we see both of these still isolated, sometimes isolated teams are coming together, and an OT-enabled SOC, how we can call it, plays a really important role here. So, different types of IT devices, what I mentioned, maybe some of you have seen this diagram already. So in the beginning, after the acquisition of CyberX, we mainly focus on OT ICS, so the industrial devices, are also called brownfield devices, or general purpose IoT. Think about what Microsoft is doing internally in all our data centers, in all our cloud data centers. We are monitoring the heating system, camera, smoke alarms. That is also part of the industrial brownfield area. On the other side, we have the typical IoTs, the enterprise IoT stuff, the networks, the corporate IoT stuff, also supported by the traditional endpoints, server laptops, and so on. And this is where everything flies together, the typical IT, the enterprise IoT that we can cover also today. And I mentioned also the green field, that is where dedicated IoT devices are coming in, and they are maybe more powerful, more modern devices, and these are devices that allow us to implement the so-called micro agent. So the vision, the big vision, is protecting all IoT devices with just one single solution. The single solution is Defender for IoT, in combination with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, leveraging the integrated discovery engine in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which can allow our customers who have E5 in place to make a quick and easy step into monitoring their enterprise IoT environment, and then maybe expand their scope into the whole picture. And as I mentioned before, threat intelligence plays a really, really important topic. As a third-party threat intelligence that we have, I mentioned Corelight already, or on top, Microsoft Defender for Threat Intelligence, based or coming from the RiskIQ acquisition, where we'll speak more intensively after the lunch break at 1 or 2 o'clock, whatever the time zone is, what we need. So that is one of the important strategies, pillars, and based on the strategy, we have acquired a company already that feeded into the micro agent with the firmware scanning. Maybe you've heard about a company acquisition, Refirm Labs, we have done last year. They had a great solution, Binwalk, that is part of this micro agent that allows firmware scanning. And so we are working really closely together with device builders as well in this environment. And what I mentioned before, the micro agent allows that we are working much closer in vertical environment. And this is a nice example with one of our partners. And I know there are a lot of HCL people in this call. This is just one example of a partner solution we have built together with one of our strategic partners. And I don't share any secrets here, so don't worry. This is coming from a public blog that HCL and Microsoft have posted recently. A nice example where the micro agent is used in medical devices. That's just one example. And you see the micro agent is working together with the Azure IoT Hub, with the Azure or with Defender for IoT, and feeding also to Sentinel, and of course into the business application that HCL has developed, the HCL core. That's just one example. There are much more than Ran will speak about later on. Connected cars is an example. We have a lot of really interesting conversation right now in the energy market with smart meters. There are just a bunch of examples, fleet logistics. There are so many different use cases where we can expand the Defender for IoT within the micro agent, where it really makes sense to look more deeper into the device and bring additional value where it makes sense. I spoke about the unified experience, the micro ecosystem, and I want to touch on one example that is really, really important for me. And I mentioned already the term cloud-enabled SOC. And maybe you have seen this slide or this Gartner Magic Quadrant diagram that came out, I think, 2 weeks ago. And we are really, really super proud about this, because Microsoft really rocked this market, the SIEM market, in the last 3 years. I think we launched Sentinel in November 2019, and so within just 3 years we came from nothing into the absolute leader position when it comes to ability to execute. And so a big thanks to you all in this partner airlift this morning. I know there are a lot of MSSPs leveraging Sentinel or managing the SOC on behalf of your customers with Sentinel, or maybe in combination with other SOC products as well. And this is why a lot of our traditional MSSP partners, mainly focusing on IT security, have started last year to expand their IT scope to OT as well. And with the same, let's say, team, with the same processes, with the same workflows, they just expanded it to OT. And this is why this term OT-enabled SOC becomes so popular and so famous. And I strongly recommend also to look in this public Microsoft security webinar we have done last week with 3 colleagues from the product team, Adi Weisberg, Amit Cohen, and Henry Siak. They did a really great public webinar. You see the link here below. Watch the recording here. Speaking about the SOC enablement with Defender for IoT, what needs to be done, how to set up a SOC, and you see here there is a screenshot of the top 15 scenarios, the OT specific scenarios we have worked already as use cases we have built in. So it's a quick and easy start to enable the OT SOC as well. So I only can recommend that you have a look in this one, and I know that Yossi later speak in his session about best practices, also about yes, this better together the Sentinel with the OT world. And another topic is, and I just touched this briefly because I know Yossi will touch this as well, the Microsoft Sentinel better together visibility into the OT assets and threats. And I really like this chart with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which allows the consolidation or the visibility across the whole kill chain, from reconnaissance up to infiltration, and what is the impact, so that the SOC analyst immediately sees at which stage is an attacker, what to expect first. And this is only possible not just when you look from the OT side, also when you combine it with a lot of the information we are collecting in Sentinel. I mentioned the threat intelligence, a lot of the combination are flying in here. This is why Microsoft has been rated and evaluated as the best in this MITRE ATT&CK for the ICS evaluation. And this completely leads to that our current position, how Gartner sees us based on the vision and the strategic acquisition we have done. You see here Refirm Lab, which was bringing firmware scanning into the solution, that we were really ranked high when it comes to, and this is not, to be honest, not a product specific evaluation. That is more about our complete strategy in the industrial IoT platform environment. Security first is built in, our openness regarding standards from edge to cloud, or from chip to cloud, or let's say from micro agent to cloud, all the way, all the end-to-end support we can do. And finally, and the last one that I highlighted here, partner-led, because we are providing great technology, but not necessarily deploy all the technology. We do the advisory, so we have built a really large partner ecosystem. And I will speak in my last session more about this, the different partner types we have. And really new as well, we are working with device builders, building stuff from the beginning on into the building security by default into devices we are developing from scratch, and working with MSSPs on the OT-enabled SOC. That's a lot what we are doing, and this is really appreciated by the evaluation of Gartner. So that is what I like to set as a scene for today. What a lot of the topics, the solution principle I mentioned, we will dive in more deeper. And with this, thanks a lot for again registering for this whole day session today, for the session this morning on Defender for IoT. And this is a good opportunity now to pass over to my colleague Samba, who will give an update on the latest and greatest on OT security updates. Samba, over to you.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Frank, for this introduction. So, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Samba Kwita. I'm the same team as Frank. I'm Senior Technical Business Strategy Manager, and I look after our leading edge security and privacy solution. So, in this first session, we are going to talk about the product updates. So, what are the new features that we have announced over the last couple of weeks, months, that we think can be really useful, not only for our partners, but also for our customers. So let's get started. Um, if just give me 1 second here. All right. So when we, this is just a very quick, overview about the new announcements and the new product features. But of course, we are going to dig a little bit deeper in each of these categories. So the first solution that we really wanted to, and the first area I wanted to cover is the updates in the appliance catalog. So we have now new devices. I will speak a little bit about the OT solution for Sentinel, the directional alert sync. If, for example, you want to close an incident alert on Sentinel or in Defender for Cloud, in Azure portal, and then this alert will be synced, automatically on the sensor itself. The ability to download the pickup file from the Azure portal. This was also asked from our MSSP partners to just be able to extract the pickup file and analyze it. Some enhancements in the device inventory, and also vulnerability and recommendation information on Azure Sentinel. So the first one, again, you will have the link that I will share after this webinar. But basically now we'll have new devices that will serve the different purposes. If, for example, you are planning to deploy Defender for IoT sensor in an environment where it's really hot or when the temperature is really harsh, so there is the regular devices that you can use for the production line. We have some small business type of equipment as well that you can deploy on the production environment, really based on the needs. So that's also why it's really important to just evaluate how potential OT devices will be analyzing with the sensor, and based on this information to choose the right device. So there is a link. You can find the list of all the devices after. So we have this partnership with Arrow, but I'm sure you are already also in contact with them. So yeah, keep in mind this is the new devices that we have. And also want to move to the new OT solution for Microsoft Sentinel. So if you're leveraging Sentinel, and this is again the discussion that I have with many partners. So now we are making things easy with out-of-the-box playbooks that you can leverage, for example, to automatically close incidents, to send email notification to the production line in case there is an incident in a specific area. Update the alert status, and also because now you have the integration with Power Automate. These are just some examples, but you can definitely also create your own playbook that really fits your customer's need. So in this OT solution for Sentinel, there are these playbooks, as you can see, but there is also several workbooks. So workbooks on Sentinel is basically a dashboard that will give you here the device inventory, an overview, some alerts, and again, to echo to what Frank was saying previously, MITRE ATT&CK framework for ICS. So there will be a dashboard about that as well. Last but not the least, you will have in this new OT solution from Sentinel, 15 analytics rules out of the box, so that can, generate incidents, based on specific criteria. For example, in network scanning, unauthorized DHCP, but you can really see the analytics rules. And the good thing in Sentinel is that you can use that, but you can also modify the analytics rules to be really close to what your customers are asking. So this is really a good way to just enable our Defender for IoT solution Sentinel. But I do not want to give the perception that Sentinel is the only supported CM solution. Of course, it makes things easier, but we can definitely integrate our Defender for IoT sensor to third-party SIEM solution as well. All right, so the directional alert sync, this also was asked from our partners because it just makes it easier to close the incident in Sentinel and to have the status updated. So prior to this feature, you will have to manually go and close the incident in both portal, but this will just make things really easier for security analysts to be able to just close an incident in one part. So if they're leveraging Sentinel, it will be on Sentinel, and that will be automatically replicated and updated on the sensor itself. So the other feature that I also talked about briefly is now you have the possibility to really download the pickup file from the Azure portal. Of course, you need to have a cloud-connected sensor to do that. I've also had several discussions with our partners on how can we really create a solution to be able to get all the pickup files in one place. So by using Sentinel, we'll be able to download based on the alerts. But you can also, for example, if you are using a central manager in a customer environment that is managing several sensors, and you want to get the pickup files and probably store them for a longer period of time. So you can also leverage the APIs that we have on the central manager on premises that you would just give the alert ID, and then this will be a way to go and grab the pickup files related to the alerts and store them in the area maybe for a longer period of time. So but for partners that are using cloud connected sensor, this really makes it easier to just be able to download directly from the Azure portal. So we also have numerous enhancements in the device inventory. And I like to start by the first one, which is really being able to merge duplicate devices. So in some environments, it's possible that the same device is appearing maybe twice. Maybe because the sensor has been discovered in separate network, or you're having a Wi-Fi and also a physical network. So it happened that you have the same device that is discovered twice, and this merge can be very useful to just get the real count of devices that you have in your environment, knowing that the pricing is also based on the number of devices. So it's really critical to make sure that you are not getting charged for the same device twice. So for that, you will just have to select the two devices that you believe are identified as separate, but in fact are only one, and just click to merge those devices. So we also now have the option to delete a single device or to just delete inactive devices by the admin user. Let's say you had, even though usually in the OT environment it's not really that dynamic, but if for some reason you have a device that is maybe decommissioned and you are no longer using it, you now have the option to delete the device as well, and which can really be very helpful. Okay, so because the Defender for IoT solution, again, we will see that in details, but provide device inventory, but also give you some information about the vulnerabilities and also the recommendation, as you can see in the slides. And so now we are also surfacing this information directly on the Azure portal. So as you can see here, there are some recommendations because the PLC mode operating mode has changed. You will see here the list, of CVEs by vendor and the list of CVEs, and that can be really, very interesting. So these information are already available on the sensor, but now what you're doing is really adding more and more capabilities on the Azure portal. So then you will get access to, basically this reporting, and you can also modify them because there are workbooks which rely on KQL, so you can also modify the reporting. to really fit what you need. And again, the CVEs here, they can also be, presented by sites. So for customers that have deployments, all over the world or in different parts of the country, it's also good to see, how many CVE and how many vulnerabilities we have detected, only based on the site where the sensor is deployed. And of course, all the severity will be categorized, all the CVE will be categorized by severity, high, medium, high, and low. And this is also very helpful to going and maybe first start in solving the highest, severity that we have discovered in the environment. So again, we will be adding more and more capabilities for the cloud-connected sensor, and for the MSSP providers, this will also make things really easier. And here I also wanted to talk about the device entity in Sentinel. So this is also coming, with the our OT connected environment in Microsoft Sentinel. So now we also support IoT device entity page. So when doing an investigation and monitoring IoT security in Microsoft Sentinel, you can also just maybe identify the most sensitive devices and jump directly to the device page on each device. Basically, you are in the entities here. You will see the different alerts that are related to a particular PLC device. You can just click here, and it will, open the device page in Defender for IoT. So, in a nutshell, these are really the recent announcements that we have for Defender for IoT. We'll speak a little bit about Defender for Enterprise IoT later in this session. So just before I close here the first part, I also wanted to say that the configuration, the central manager that we use and that you may be familiar with to manage, multiple OT devices, OT sensor. So this is really a top priority for us. So there are some engineering work done to modernize the UI and also adding more capabilities in the near future. Because in an environment where connection to the internet is not an option, the central manager can be also very interesting and even necessary if you don't want to individually connect to each sensor to get the inventory or to change the configuration. So with that, I like to pass over back to you, Frank, to continue.
Okay, thanks a lot, Samba, for this overview about the updates on the product. There is one question in the chat I just see, or there were multiple that were answered already, but this just came in. I just read, and maybe you or Yossi, whoever like to take this. So to use analytic rule templates in Sentinel, the raw data should be existing inside the Sentinel workspace. How does it work? Is raw data being sent to Sentinel, or how is the approach?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So as of today, we don't yet have the raw log from the sensor that we send to Sentinel. So we are only sending the alerts that we can use in analytics world to basically generate an incident. But that's a very valid point. Today you have the raw log directly on the sensor. So we do have option to leverage the sensor API, grab the raw logs and send them back to Sentinel, but this is not necessarily ideal. So in our roadmap, we are really thinking about also getting the raw log and stream them directly to Microsoft Sentinel. But as of today, we only get the alerts.
Yeah, but to add to this, I know that at least one partner that is also in this audience today has developed their own solution, a special PowerShell to upload a lot of the raw data into Sentinel or log analytics workspace and do then further analysis. So partners are allowed to enrich the existing solution with own developments. That's what our partners are already doing. And I know at least from one partner who have done it already. So we talked about Ignite Spotlight in Munich about such an enrichment.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's planned actually in the roadmap. And just one minute here. This is the same type of strategy that we had for our Defender for Endpoint, our Defender for Office. So we usually started by sending the alerts and then using the roll log from the advanced hunting. So this is already the strategy. And for now, you can do something on your own, but we plan to add these native capabilities later.
Wonderful. There's just another question coming in. Is device map in brackets a sensor portal coming into the Microsoft Defender for IoT portal? The device
this
map.
is also something that we are planning basically to add more and more capabilities in the cloud connected sensor. So as of today, it's on premises only on the sensor interface, but yes, we plan to get that as well on the Azure portal.
Wonderful. And thanks again for the audience for raising these questions to make it as interactive as possible. So thanks a lot, Samba. And the next speaker is on this deployment, fine-tuning, best practices, tips and tricks, everything, all the secrets that you should know from Yossi. Yossi, thanks a lot for supporting the airlift. And yeah, great to have you here. And over to you.
Sure, great. Thank you, Frank. First of all, to your last point. Okay, we would like to get your feedback about specific use cases that you would like to explore. If you're using Sentinel and you think something would be beneficial, like adding additional playbooks, workbooks that are related to conversion between IT and OT, all of those things, we would definitely like to get your feedback, and we are working to add more and more capabilities. Let me start sharing my screen. Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
See your screen.
Perfect. Thank you. So look, we don't have a lot of time today. I can talk about Defender for IoT, our products for hours and hours and hours, but we want to make it very focused. And this session is basically, when Frank and Samba asked me to do this session, it came for partners that wanted to have like a more deep technical dive into the product itself. So I will try to do this a little more technical as possible. And please feel free to follow up if you have a specific topics, if you have customers that asking specific questions, etc. Okay, so our agenda today will be related to deployment and how we do this and the things that you need to notice during the product installations, what are fine-tunings that you need to do, how to make it the optimized monitoring product. We will focus today on the OT environment. And I will touch a bit about Sentinel and Defender for IoT integration. This also came as a request from partners, so I think it's important to mention. And I will do it Sentinel in very high level. Please watch the webinar that was posted in the chat before. It's very insightful, and there's a lot of values that you can provide to your customers, specifically if you're MSSP, and basically cover every type of environment that customer have. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about sensor itself. Okay, before we actually going to deploy Defender for IoT sensor, okay, we need to understand the environment that we're going actually to be installed with. This slide you will see in different places, different conversations, but it's actually explain how Microsoft positioned itself in front of customer from a security perspective, right? For example, when we actually looked at customer environments, we saw a lot of devices that are connected to customer networks, and as time go, further we see more and more connected devices in those environments. Basically, most of the organization focused on traditional endpoints before, protected laptops, most of them operating systems, but we came as a CyberX acquisition into Microsoft to protect the industrial critical networks, controllers, old legacy devices with very old operating systems like XP, Solaris systems, Linux, embedded devices, etc. And currently, we're also providing solutions for enterprise networks, meaning that in even those production lines, you have also like a small offices with printers, smart TVs that basically, you present the sensitive information, and the same smart TV have a network card and cameras, etc. And we see more and more attacks. And to complete the story, we have a kind of an EDR solution that Ran will going to talk a little bit later. But the point in here that we are here to cover everything. And when we start in our deployment, we have any type of solutions for any type of connected devices and device in the network. Okay, in my session, I'm going to focus specifically on OT, okay, because we do have other sessions separate. If you do have any questions about how we work together or specifically to any type of devices, please do post it in the chat. We'll try to focus on this as well. So really quick, if we look at customer networks, okay, if we come and think about what we want to propose them, right? Okay, so if the customer have a production line, like it's a manufacturing factory, probably they will need to monitor the OT networks, operational technology, right? This will be done by the OT sensor. Building management system and data centers, this is something that people don't really understand, but the same equipment that you have in OT exists over there, okay? Basically, all Microsoft data centers protected by Defender for IoT, because we are protecting the chillers and coolers and elevators and all the systems that are called BMS, building management. Okay, that also, the same using same vendors like Siemens and Schneider Electric, etc. Okay, the same equipment is located over there, and data center is a critical network, critical infrastructure. Currently, think about Azure, right? Data center will fail because of air conditioner crashed, okay, and computers overheated. Microsoft can close the business, right? So it's very critical infrastructure and require protection as well. And the same sensors that used for OT networks will be used over there. Okay. For more IT networks, we do have Enterprise IoT that is also that comes in two ways of deployment. We'll have a dedicated session for this through an MDE agent. That means no sensors at all. We are actually leveraging the capability of an MDE to collect data. Okay, and we will have additional sensors that we're currently in public preview, going to be GA very, very soon, that basically will also connect in the same way to network switches. Okay, and collect the data, same as OT, and send it to a cloud. Okay, this way we actually cover in any type of unmanaged device in any type of network. Okay, from how it actually looks. Okay, if you're familiar with the Purdue model, basically the Purdue model splits the network by interconnection between devices to different layers. Okay, usually layer 0 it's sensors like temperature sensors. Layer 1 is kind of it's controllers, PLCs, programmable logical controllers, and RTUs, etc. Those are embedded devices that reprogrammed to do something like getting data from the temperature sensor and sending data to a cooling system to cool down the process if it's overheated. The supervisory are computers, because usually those are in closed and operational environments, usually very, very old. You will see a lot of XPs, you will see a lot of Linux devices, okay, 20, 30 years computers, etc. And more or less 3 is as well. Okay, layer 3 it's very similar to 2, but more for historians and databases that collect information, etc. So we actually are, the OT solution is actually coming to monitor those networks. Okay, we do this by monitoring passively the network switches. All of those devices that you will see everything from layer 1 and above, because usually layer 0 is serial. Okay, they will be connected through a switch. It's a network. It's a regular network that you know from IT. And if the switches have a kind of a, let's say, it's a managed switch, it have a port mirroring capabilities that basically will send data that going through that switch one way outside for analysis. This is the capability of switches. Okay, with this way, and because it's sending only one way, you cannot go back. Okay, so if we are monitoring our the network with our sensor, the environment still it's untouchable. Okay, because data is going only one way, you cannot go inside in any way. Okay, so we passively monitor this network into specific interface on the sensor that is dedicated interface with no IP address. It's working in what is called a promiscuous mode. It basically listen to the traffic that's coming in, and that's it. Okay, and we have a dedicated second NIC for management, so we can actually log in with console. Okay, with basically sensor management. The second network adapter has an IP address. Okay, in customer networks. So basically you can log into this and see what's going on over there, and it can be connected to a local SIM. Now the sensor can work as a standalone. You don't need anything else. All the analytics, everything, the graphic interface, it's on the sensor. Okay. The second option, if you have you need more than one sensor, and this is usually the case. If you come to a factory, you probably have a distribution locations, like you have server rooms located at different places, etc. So it makes sense to put several sensors. If you have several sensors, you probably will need some kind of a local data aggregator, a kind of a manager that only present the data that coming from all the sensors in one graphic interface. Okay. So this is we also can provide. This is free. You can download this from the site, and it all can be collected to a local SIM like Splunk or QRadar, etc. Now, one of the most powerful Microsoft propositions, it's cloud. Okay, so all the sensor have capability to connect to the cloud directly. Okay, of course it will go through a proxy or gateways and firewalls. This is basically normal customer architecture, and it's in parallel, not related to the Defender for Management, can be connected to the cloud. It means that it can be only on-prem with no connection outside. It can be only cloud, or it can work with both, on-prem with manager and with cloud. Okay, it's two different streams. Okay, now basically, if the data go into a cloud, okay, and from there it can go to Sentinel, can go to other third-party analytics, other integrations that we have, and even let's say we already in Sentinel have playbooks that you can actually send data back to firewalls that can, for example, block some incident if required. We have a dedicated use cases that we can use in order to quickly, much quicker and more efficient to mitigate an incident. Okay, this is our goal, to create a real end-to-end asset and vulnerability and incident management, and to make sure that our customer will have an opportunity to remediate any threat that they have as fast as possible. Okay, looking at how basically we connect, we talked about we connecting to a switch and to manage switch, but this is not always the case. If you're thinking about switches, you have in your house a switch, right? Okay, but this is not a managed switch. You don't have a lot of capabilities over there. You cannot create different, VLAN networks. You don't have. It's very basic equipment, and sometimes the site also don't really have a lower layer, don't have a managed switches. So there are a few ways actually to collect the data, to sniff the data from traffic. The first one, if you do have a managed switch, is just to connect as the customer to reconfigure the switch and create this, option for enable this option for port mirroring. Okay, this is the easiest one. And then we come in with a sensor, and I hope it's not too small, and basically collect the data. And we can put several switches into one sensor. Okay, the second option is to use remote span or ER span. This is a remote capability that if I'm deciding to actually monitor low layer switch and it supports RSpan, okay, we can create a remote VLAN between in the network, and the data that will be collected on switch B will go through the whole switches to switch D when I can put the sensor, right? Okay, it's best way because basically if you have like 10 switches, eventually you can collect data to one switch and connect only one sensor. Okay, but there are some considerations that needed to be taken, like for example, customer need to approve this because it's kind of increase the bandwidth in his network. Okay, it's additional bandwidth, and it's also basically, you need to know how to do it properly, because you can create a loop and and crush switches. So some customer will allow it, some customer will not. Okay, specifically critical customer will not allow to use RSPAN, but this is on the table, and we use this in many manufacturing customers that were really satisfied with this. Okay, because they didn't need it to add additional hardware or software anywhere. Okay, and this is important right now to get hardware, and the lead time is crazy. Okay, in the world. Additional option, if your switch is actually not managed, okay, then, and you actually need to monitor the whole environment, the low layer network. So in this case, basically, it's recommended to use a network tab aggregation tab, basically. Okay, there are a few types of network tabs like brokers. Please use aggregation tab. It's inline solution. It's basically you connect between two devices. You will connect additional device that will actually, the data goes through that device and copy and send the additional copy of the traffic to to our sensor. But in this case, you need to understand that we monitor in only one line. So when we actually design in the network, we need to select the proper line that we actually see the majority of data. So if I will just look at this example below, okay, basically I have few controllers right in my network, and I have HMI, human monitoring interface, that basically communicate with those controllers. The controllers are not communicate with each other. Okay, they all communicate with HMI. So it makes sense, if I want to choose one line to monitor, I will choose HMI line, because then I will see all the traffic between all the controllers. Okay, if I will put the same one on one of the lines for this PLC, I will see only the communication of this PLC. Okay, so it's important to choose the right line and send data to the sensor. And the last option is basically virtual. Look, we are a software company. We are hardware agnostic. We try to work on every hardware as possible, as long as resources and drivers are fit. Okay, but if the customer have kind of an ESXi, that the data going through a virtual switches, it's the best option. You just install the software and that's it. Okay, and basically how you do it, you install a virtual machine. Okay, install our ISO file, ISO image basically on it, and connect to a switch that's run in promiscuous mode. You have an option to select a promiscuous mode on the switch, on virtual switch, and basically it will send data to our sensor. That's it. Very easy. 5 minutes installation. Okay, and basically we are using this in places that the customer decided to use, for example, their own hardware. Okay, that are not certified for us. So we sometimes have a concern about the drivers. Okay, because new hardware sometimes not working properly with our with our operating system. We're currently using Ubuntu 18. We're now upgrading this to Ubuntu 20, but not all hardware devices, hardware components working with Ubuntu 18, for example, drivers. Okay, not supported with them. In this case, it's sometimes easy to install an ESXi. Okay, there's a few version of ESXi, and just install a virtual machine. Okay, and that's it. So we are doing this a lot. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about preparation steps, right?
Justy, one question what I saw in the chat multiple times, and I think there is a little bit confusion regarding all the different names and terminology. Well, there was a question whether it's about the central manager. Is it the same as the on-premise management station or something like this regarding all this different terminology? Because I know we sometimes use different names for sometimes the same or for different things. Maybe when you can explain just in a few words that we are clear which different components we have, especially regarding the management.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so we call this the on-premises management console is the central management. Is the same one. Okay, it's software that installed in parallel to the sensors to aggregate the data. Okay, if you look in our website, when basically if you look in our website and get it started, you have options to install a sensor in operation technology. Enterprise IoT sensor. And if you go to on-premises management console, you have the version over here. Okay. So this is the central management. Okay, it's again free. It's when you click download, it will download an ISO file. Same way you install it in parallel to the sensor, and you have everything. Okay. Okay, perfect.
Thanks a lot. And there was just another question coming in regarding the last topic you spoke about, regarding the vSwitch. What are the vSwitch best practices when you use Hyper-V?
Basically, in Hyper-V, we have a dedicated instruction how to install this. Okay, but the point is the same. Okay, if the data is going through a vSwitch, it doesn't really matter if it's Hyper-V or ASXi. Basically, the data going through a switch. Okay, when you are connecting a network card to that switch that's running in promiscuous mode, it's basically the data will start flowing into a sensor. Okay, and that's it. Now, how to connect this properly? You know, I can send separately a guide. It's part of our the documentation, and it's explained exactly what you need to configure, what you need to select, what checkbox you need to do. It's very, very quick to do this. Okay, so we can take this on offline if required.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Yossi. So we are collecting anyway all the questions, and when some are not answered during this call, we will come back to you.
Okay, great, perfect. Okay, so again, I apologize. We just don't have a lot of time, but I would like to cover this. I would like to hear your questions. Best if it will be like close to the end, so we can actually collect them and focus on the most important ones. The point in here that I wanted to say that before every installation, okay, before every deployment of a sensor or of a manager, you come to a site and you decide to do a POC, for example, right? Or evaluation or risk assessment, or you are coming to deployment. Okay, the most important thing is preparation. Okay, know before you go. This is the most important thing. And this came from our experience. We built some kind of a guidelines here from what we learned from our customers. So first of all, okay, we have a kind of a pre-deployment checklist. The checklist is basically will allow you to identify where is the best place to connect. Okay, it's part of our docs. Okay, this presentation will be shared, so feel free to click this. It's on documentation and references. The checklist will ask, for example, for an IP address for the sensor. It will ask how your environment looks like, what VLANs you have. The point in here is that, for example, in the network, if you basically will connect to wrong switch, you will not see the relevant information. And this is always a challenge. If you come to the customer, they will prefer to connect you to the higher level switches, the backbone switches. Okay, because it's easier. They are, when you have different vendors, only the backbone switches usually managed by the customer itself. So he can really just configure the switch to do spend port over there and easy. But it doesn't mean that this is the right switch to connect. When you actually decide where to connect, you need to, think about the flow of the data. The controller will communicate with a workstation, so the data will go through that switch. Okay, basically the one that painted in red. Okay, in here. Okay, if I will connect to the bond switch, I will not see that communication because the flow of the data will not go there. If the same PLC will send data to Bill PC over here, okay, this data will go through the bond switch and we will catch this. So if I'm now selecting the right switch to connect to get all the data to sniff the right switch, actually, I will choose the one that's located over here, okay, between the PLCs. Okay, so the question is coming to focus us to ask the right question. Okay, and then we always need to do a review session with the customer. It's not just guessing. Guessing is always bad. Sometimes you don't see the whole data just from network diagram or checklist. Okay. Questions have to be related to if we connect to the switch, we will see the right communication. We need to understand if there are several switches, if they are physically located one near each other, because on network diagram, they one near each other, but eventually they are in different buildings in the factory. And then, you will not just pull cables between the buildings. You will decide to put 2 sensors. Makes sense. And if the switch is managed and has this port mirroring capability, and of course, appliances, we have a different type of appliances that we propose. Sometimes customers bring their own, sometimes we provide. We need to validate what kind of appliances they need, what kind of space in the rack they need, if there is a power, if there's a management port. If you remember, every sensor have at least 2 network adapters, one for monitoring, one for management. So the management have to be connected to customer IT or DMZ network. We need to know that if you are come to a factory and you put a sensor, you have this connection nearby somewhere. So those questions we need to validate before we go. Okay, and after we do this and we decide what kind of switches we need actually to configure, the configuration is easy. Okay, it's all easy afterwards. Okay, the deployment comes like really quickly. To configure a switch to work in a spent mode, this is an example of Cisco 2960, one of the most common switches in industrial networks. You just go in, you create a monitoring session, let's say one, and then decide what interface you're going to monitor. Let's say this is 24 port switch, so we will monitor port from 1 to 23. And then in the same session, we will define destination interface that will be port 24. And it means that basically you will collect data from 1 to 23 and send it one way to port 24. This is basically how you actually configure a switch. Very, very easy. But again, just need to make sure that we, for example, when we did installation, we never touch customers' switches. We just guide them what to do in order to do this properly. Okay, this is a responsibility, for the customer. Okay, when we actually do this, the next thing we need to do, we'll validate that switch is configured properly, that the switch is actually sees the right data that we assumed it will see, and basically, get, see that the spend port is there, okay? Data is there. And this we do by pickup analysis. I would suggest just to take a laptop with a Wireshark, okay? Wireshark free programs that show data that's coming from interface, connect a direct cable to the port 24 in this case, and you will immediately see the data that's going through that switch, okay? And when we see the data, okay, we will identify if the packets that we see are unicast. Okay, there are a few types of packet types: broadcast, multicast, unicast. If the switch is not configured properly, you will see only broadcast. Meaning in destination, we see 255, 255, broadcast, and etc. If you see actual source and destination addresses, it's a unicast communication that's not related to to our computer. Okay, we just identify communication between 2 actual devices that are not, direct communication, unicast packets. This means that the switch is configured properly with span capability. It's a span port is enabled. Okay, we see not related traffic tools. The second part, if you go to statistics in Wireshark and protocol hierarchy, you will see all the protocols that we identify in the communication. And immediately you can find that, for example, you see Modbus. Modbus is industrial protocol, and it actually takes about 33% of all the communication in this, TCP communication, right? And we have ISO, that is Siemens protocol. So we actually see industrial protocols. It means that we are in the right place. If we don't see industrial protocols, we're probably in a too high level switch. So it's important to notice also what you see. And eventually statistics, you go to statistics and graph, IO graph, select bits. So you actually will see megabits per second. And this will show you what is the bandwidth in your network. Okay, 2 megabits per second. Okay, very easy to know. And again, customer can configure the switch, connect the cable, record. Few minutes will be enough, like 5 minutes will be enough. Send you the file. You will open this in your computer, doing this kind of analysis, and you know that if this is the right switch, if this is basically configured properly to span port, and what is the bandwidth, means you now know what kind of appliance to bring. Okay, what architecture type of appliance, and I will talk about this in a second. Okay. The next part, so basically the next part is just to locate right appliances to right networks. And this is just an example of architecture, a little bit, heavy slide, but the point in here is that we have in here 3 different industrial zones, that each one of them sending one-way data to different sensors. Okay, and I did not relate it to physical locations. Everything is like on one map. And this one is actually getting information from 2 industrial zones, and still not breaking the segregation in air-gapped environment, because the data only flow one way. Okay, and have a management port to the core-port network. And etc. We have additional one, a small one, rugged one, for more extreme environments. Maybe it's offshore or like a cold or too hot place. So you need a fanless over here, sending the same data over here, and we have different type of appliances, and everything is actually aggregated into management that's located in IT network and sent to a cloud. Plus, we have to monitor the IT network, the cameras, office computers. We have with the Defender for Endpoint, but printers, everything that is actually embedded devices in IoT devices that in IT, in corporate network, will be also monitored by the Enterprise IoT and will be sent to a cloud, where it will be integrated with Defender for Endpoints and Sentinel, and in future other solutions. Okay, this is in very high level how to prepare the network. So let's talk a little bit about a sensor installation. Okay, every sensor installation is actually starting with you select what kind of appliances you need. Okay, we have we are a software company, so we can work with virtual appliances or physical. This is taken from our documentation, so it's available over there. Plus the links are in here. The appliances, the virtual appliances, all the appliances actually split by a software architecture. Software architecture is basically resources that we need, okay, for a different environment. So if we have, for example, very small environment that we can work up to 10 megabits per second, okay, and we have like about 100 assets. Those the ones very good when you have, like, say, a power grid and you have a very small substations everywhere. So very, very small distributed substations. You can use the smallest appliance. It's usually, if it's a hardware, it's a ruggedized appliance that is a DIN rail or wall mount. And basically, it's in this one, in software architecture, will require 4 CPU, 8 GB RAM memory, and 60 GB storage. Okay, and you can install the same one as a virtual machine. Okay, if you have a very small traffic and very low number of assets that you need to monitor. As higher we see, we have a different type of other hardware profiles, what we call software architectures as well. That as more devices we're going to monitor, as bigger bandwidth in the traffic, we will see you need stronger and stronger software architecture. Okay, it means that we need more and more resources. And this is important if you are going to a 6i or Hyper-V, and you need to allocate right resources in the computer. Okay, for this. We validated a lot of hardware. This is just a partial list in here. And basically something that we actually, this is installed in our offices, and every upgrade, everything, we test our software on those ones. Okay, this is just number of is this type of hardware in HP, Dell, and most of them. You can actually also modify what type of network adapters you have. For example, it's very important that, for example, to identify as well, as this is part of a checklist, if the customer have a copper or fiber optic network adapters. This is something that you actually need to talk to the supplier of hardware and validate this before buying an appliance. So and then decide how much NICs network adapters actually you need. Okay, maybe you need 4, maybe you need 8, maybe you need copper, maybe you need fiber, in different types. And according to this, the suppliers that personally we work with Zero, but it's not mandatory. Okay, we'll provide you the right hardware for that. Okay. Let's talk about actually what we do in the deployment. First of all, okay, we order hardware, right? Or we set the right virtual environment, Hyper-V or a 6i. We configure the span ports. Okay, we connect all the cables. The customer need to give us an IP address because we want to connect through the sensor, from the network. So we need to have an access to this. So we need an IP address in customer network. Okay, we got default gateway, DNS, whatever is needed. And there are specific firewall rules to open if you are connecting to the cloud. So usually in the customer firewall, you need to allow this connection. There are a few methods that I'm not going to touch right now that we have a link in here in our documentation that will talk about connection through a proxy, through express route, etc. There are a few methods that you can use in all of this, and also how to set up an on-prem manager. Okay, eventually the whole installation process is done after the hardware is installed. You just need to go to Azure, to your Azure portal, write Defender for IoT. Defender for IoT, you will get to this Get Started page, okay? And you need basically to connect this to your subscription, okay, to enable subscription. Why? Because subscription is basically, it's a credit card, okay? So if you are committed to a number of devices, you want to get a license, you need to assign a subscription in here to start working. So when you actually starting a new project, okay, the customer usually, you ask for the customer, go to Defender for IoT, to pricing, and add a plan. Now we have three types of plans. Frank will talk about this a little bit deeper, but basically monthly commitment, annual, and trial. And according to this, you can get a number, how much, and assign how much number of devices you will need to monitor. Okay, and it will basically tell you what is the price. And when you close this, you can create a sensor and start working. Okay. I would suggest to go with trial in the beginning. It will give you 30 days for 1,000 committed devices. It's good for POCs. Great. You just click on this and start work. Okay, with this. After 30 days, it will start. Okay, the next step will be, it's actually go to our OT sensor. Let's set up a sensor. Okay, and you give a sensor name, add a subscription, and just choose sensor version, resource name, display name, and this is just a regular things that you do for almost every product. Register, and it will give you to download. It will give you a link to download the file. When the file will be downloaded, okay, when the file will be downloaded, you actually need to log in to the IP. Remember, the customer have to provide us an IP address to log in. And when you log in to the IP, you will actually get you will need to upload this file that you downloaded from Azure. When you will upload the file, it will automatically establish the connection to Azure. Okay, if it's cloud connected, or just start the product if it's on-prem. Okay, you don't need to do anything else related to any type of connection. Okay. The only thing is for local management, inside local management, there's you need to go and get a link and upload this to a sensor, so it will also create a connection over there. But it's something in easy process, it's nothing else. So the installation is done here, okay? Basically, again, you download the file from there, you activate this with your subscription, commit to a number of devices. It will give you a file that you need to upload to a sensor, and that's it. The system is running. Very, very, very easy. Okay. So the only thing that we need to do is basically when we actually start to work with the sensor, it's optimization of the data. When we first connect, on which server, there's a question about which server we activate the sensor. Actually, it's for each sensor. When you connect the first time, the sensor will give you basically, sorry, there's a question, and I'm going to add this. When you actually connect the first time to a sensor, you will have the initial screen that will ask you to upload the file. Okay, the activation file. When you upload it, start working. Okay, that's it, nothing else. Okay. On-prem manager don't need an activation, I think, oh, it is, but it's also it's the same way. It's the same way. Okay, so I'm just getting back quickly. Okay, this is a sensor. The first thing when we will start, we will see when we connect the sensor, that we will have, we'll see the map starting to create, and we have a lot of alerts. Okay. Now, alerts usually they are true, but when you first connect, sometimes the alerts is that normal behavior that you see, it's not something that we see. We see something as an anomaly at the first stage when you just connect, and you just need to review the alerts and see if you don't have something that is basically a normal behavior in the network. So just do a validation. Okay, like for example, if I see like unauthorized SSH access, okay, we see a communication between SSH access between two devices that we see as unauthorized, but for you it's a normal activity in the network. So in this case, you will go to the alert, take action, and do alert learn. And from this point, every SSH communication between those specific devices will be considered as a normal behavior in the network. So again, it's done like only 1-2 minutes you spend on this. It's very, very easy. You usually identify the things that are immediately, that appeared in the first time. Go through alerts, okay, close the ones that are not relevant, learn the ones that you normal behavior, and that's it. Okay, this is the main fine tuning that you need to do. Additional one, and this is important, is public addresses and subnet masks. If you basically look at Wireshark pickup, okay, you will see communication between IP to IP, but you will never see the mask. Okay, what is the subnet mask in the traffic? Okay, this is something that we cannot identify, okay, in the network. So basically, we consider everything that we discover as class C. You can see it in the system settings in subnet. You will see all the subnets that we discovered, plus as you see everything class C, 255, 255, 2550, and no names, just because this information is not seen in the traffic directly. Okay. So in this case, what I would suggest, just go through all of this, and if you identify, let's say, that with a customer that basically this is class B, okay, it means that basically, you just change it, okay, you just change it to like 00, okay, and here 00, and you can give it a name. Okay, one point regarding the ICS networks, if we see a subnet that inside we don't see any industrial equipment or any industrial communication or protocol, nothing, it will be considered non-ICS network. Okay, if we do see Siemens devices, we see S7 protocol, Modbus, it will be considered as an ICS network automatically, but you can change it. Okay, if you know that you have OT devices for them, you can change it by the click of a button. Okay, this is important because this brings us actually to fine-tune number 3. Okay, fine-tune number 3. Before this, okay, number 3 is also important to identify if you have any public IPs that are used internally. Okay, this is something that's important to identify. Otherwise, they will be considered as internet external connections. Okay, so just need to look at this. Yeah, number 4 is it's important devices. Look, not every device is the same. They have the same severity. So if I look at my devices, I have a lot of controllers, right? But I know that my PLC West is, let's say, a cooling system in my very critical process. It's very, very important. But PLC East, it's my air conditioner in my kitchen. This one is much more important. So in this case, I will click on the device and just check, like, mark as important. And if you see a small star, those are important devices that we configure. Okay, means that basically when we actually do in attack vector simulations, risk assessment reports, all of those devices will get a higher score of severity. So it's very, very important to do this. Okay, so and sometimes you actually install and sometimes you install a system and you run attack vector simulation and you don't really see a lot of vectors. It's because you did not configure, you did not mark devices to be important. And the last few things that are important to mention as a fine tuning, it's a layout. Okay. When I mentioned in here in subnets that you actually check ICS network, in many cases you have flat networks. It means that we see IT and OT devices in one place. I see it a lot. In mining, for example, you see a lot of the computers in the same network, like like tractors. Okay, so it's happening. Customers don't really do a good segregation. Okay, so in this case, everything that will not consider to be ICS network will be merged into kind of a one icon. So everything that let's say, if you go in here, it's currently not activated, but let's say every printers, every NTP server, data set, all of this will be consolidated into one icon only. Okay, and in order to disable this option, you need to actually go in here, and currently it's disabled. You need to disable it from here. Okay, it will basically, the goal in here, to reduce the number of icons on the screen. Okay, this is why this exists, and this is activated by default. I disable this for my demo. Okay, so we'll see more devices. But if you have 1,000 devices and only 100 OT, okay, you should use this option. Okay, plus we have two ways of layouts. One of them is by connections. Okay, so we will actually show all the map as a connections. Okay, and the second one is a Purdue model. Okay, so very important to show this. In the Purdue model, you will see, of course, all the industrial equipment. Sorry, Purdue. All the industrial equipment in the bottom. Okay, all the supervisory computers, HMIs, in the middle, and the rest are what is usually IT and connection to the internet on top on the enterprise. Okay, just for your visibility. Okay, and the last one is basically optional for import authorized device list. Okay, we don't really see all the names. Like in here, for example, Office access point. You know, I added a list of devices in here in Office access point because and it's added a name over here. If I will see in my inventory, you will see that some of devices still have IP, okay, as a name, because we didn't see the name in the traffic. Not always it's possible passively to see this. Okay, so there's an option to go to system settings and import. Okay, and basically in here to upload a spreadsheet, a CSV file with authorized devices with names. When I mean authorized, the goal is actually also to say, okay, the customer knows that he have like 100 devices, right? He knows he basically manage this, this list. Okay, so if we upload a list of the IPs and names, first of all, it will give names to the devices. Plus, every device that's not in this list will be configured as unauthorized device. Okay, it means that customer will immediately identify devices that he did not expect to see in his network. So as you see, let's just finish this really quickly. Okay, we have to review alerts. We have to look for public addresses, for example, that use internally. It's a rare situation, but it happens. To define subnet mask to see that we're actually in the right subnet mask, especially now when it's important to have zero trust conversations. Define important devices, right click and this, and then select, and then choose what layout you want to see the data in the map, and import it on a list of assets. Okay, very easy. Usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes for everything, and it will be great. Now, the only thing that is important at the end to actually finish the installation is learning mode. Okay, basically the system, when you actually activate this, it will it have 5 engines of anomaly detection. One of them is a policy violation engine. Okay, when you start policy, when you first plug the system, it starts to collect data, and every new device will not trigger alert, right? Okay, we don't want this because currently like 1,000 devices will be added initially. And basically, it doesn't make sense to show 1,000 alerts. So initially, the system in learning period, every malware, every anomaly, every unauthorized activity will trigger an alert. But new devices, new communication, or within your protocol at this period of learning will not trigger an alert. Everything else will do. Okay, so after a week or two, depends on the size of the network. The suggestion is actually to go to network monitoring, detection engines, okay, and turn learning mode off. Okay, from this point, the system should be stable. If we discovered 200 devices, 201st device that will be after learning is off will trigger an alert. Okay, very important to for proper monitoring. The second part, you will see there that there's a smart IT learning. Now, we saw that because there are flat networks, okay, and sometimes they are very dynamic, means even if after 2 weeks we turn the learning mode off, we still have a lot of false positives about new communication discovered, etc. So we added additional feature to reduce that noise and false positives. That basically, if during the next 7 days after learning mode is off, it will look at the traffic that discovered, a new traffic that will discover that should trigger, and basically monitor, let's say, changes. Like if device, let's say, was not changed during 7 days, it's currently in production mode. If it was changed, it will from that change it will start counting additional 7 days. Okay, so this is very good, specifically if you want to make sure that what you discover is right and not in very noisy networks, and not just false positive. Okay, should always be on, by the way. This is it. This is how you actually install a sensor. We don't have a lot of time left, I think.
Yeah. Yes, can we just pause for 2 questions? There was a question from Arjan coming, and Arjan, thanks a lot for being really active in the question and answer session here. The question is, on which server do we activate the sensor? I think that's happening from the portal, correct?
You create an activation file in the portal and you upload it to a sensor. Okay, same with Manager.
Okay, and the other question from Benedict, as you explained, the checkbox, the ICS network checkbox.
Yes.
Can you exactly describe what it does? Because Benedict can't find information in the docs on this.
Okay, as I mentioned, when you actually look, if you have a subnet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, automatically, if we see in the same subnet devices like Siemens, Modbus protocols, and any something that will actually relate, that you have some industrial equipment over there, we will set as a checkbox over here and set this as ICS network, right? Now, you can do it manually, of course. Now, what happened if you have subnets that do not have ICS network checked? Okay, I mentioned we automatically will present only one icon for this subnet. So you will see here an icon that will say 172.16.00, for example, and number of, in this case, you will see 4. Okay, but it can be a number of assets that inside that subnet. Okay, let's say you have printers, right? Okay, you have a lot of printers, and you don't want to display 20 printers because you are all operational security engineer in OT. You don't care about printers. So you don't really want to show 20 printers on the map. It's, it's make it very hard to see. So we actually going on the map to show this as one icon only. Okay. So this is the one point. Okay, we just the ICS subnet is just to, we treat this as ICS network, and this is the focused network to work with. So really quickly, I know that I'm out of time. Frank asked me to talk a little bit about Sentinel. Sentinel, listen, I will not just dive in too much. Eventually, I would suggest to look at the session. The webinar was really good. We got a very good feedback about it. The whole point in Sentinel is that we are transforming Sentinel to be IT and OT SIEM. This is the only SIEM that actually natively get information from different data sources and actually consolidate this data and convergent from SIEMs that is working only on IT to SIEMs that actually manage the whole environment, no matter if it's building management, enterprise IoT equipment, OT, data from Defender for Cloud, data from Defender for Endpoints, everything in one place, okay? And basically, if you're thinking about monitoring OT environments, you always need a visibility, consolidated monitor in a SIEM, and a way to remediate this quickly. Okay, everything that if you think about, let's say, Mitra attack tactics, all the lateral movement, all the techniques that used that are presented over there, they actually end-to-end kill chains, okay, let's say, and you cannot fulfill those without have a native integration information that coming from different places to one place, okay, and eventually, I'm last things that just want to mention in Sentinel what is native. Okay, really quick, we have built-in workbooks, we have built-in playbooks. Like, for example, one of the example, if we get a message that there's an incident in a PLC, we will present if this what are CVs in the same PLC. This is super important because if a device was attacked, you want to see if this device is vulnerable at the same time, right? Okay, and then get access to its information, entities, firmware, and everything else over there. Okay, and this is accessible immediately after you actually connect everything. I think I'm basically done. Just as a key takeaways, you need to have a proper preparation. It's always okay. No go if you don't know enough in the network. Okay, please do ask questions, collect information, and use us. We will help you to be successful, your customers, right? We are the only ones that have a kind of a real hybrid solution. So no matter if it's cloud connected environment, and even in cloud connected, we are not closing the gap. You know, we're not touching the segregation over here because we are passively connecting to those networks. So if it's a cloud connected or non-cloud connected in energy, usually it's non-cloud. Okay, we can adapt to any environment with different solutions. It's easy and plug-and-play solutions. Deployment is, it's takes few minutes if you do everything right and the environment fits for this. And of course, our proper proposition with Sentinel, Defender for IT, and basically what Microsoft is pushing, XDR plus Sentinel, we are the last piece of to actually bridge the gap between all those IT and OT challenges that we have right now in the world. Thank you.
Yes, thanks to you, Yossi. This was brilliant. I think I can listen to you for another hour, but then we over bombard the audience here with too much stuff. So I think you all have earned a 10-minute break now, and I think we all answered most or all of the questions right now. I don't see any open questions. So thanks Samba and the other ones in the meantime in the background for answering this. So Yossi will stay available in the call when other further questions are coming in related to Yossi's topic. Feel free to post them in the chat. Yossi is not presenting anymore today, but I think he will stay, and so we have more time to answer your specific questions. So thanks a lot, Yossi. Yossi, that was brilliant. So I think you all have earned a 10-minute break now. I think we continue at 20:22 the hour. Okay, so we'll see you back in 9 minutes. So welcome back. Hope the break was long enough to take a coffee or some other drinks. We mentioned this already this morning. Two more interesting, more newer topics: Enterprise IoT and the concept with DLS, data lifecycle security. So again, welcome Samba, speaking about the Enterprise IoT and how we leverage Microsoft Defender for Endpoint in this concept. Samba, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Frank. So over the next 25 minutes, we are going to talk about the Enterprise IoT and how it fits to the broader Defender for IoT solution portfolio. And so before I start, just wanted to give here a very quick, introduction, and I'm sure you also have, the same observation about the number of devices, in general that are exploding, and in particular related to IoT and IT. And if you look at, for example, the information from Gartner's and from many other third-party type of reporting, the world is really the total number of devices in 2021 or 20 billion. It will grow to 27 billion in 2025. So, which is that incredible growth, and that also brings some challenges actually for the security teams. So these devices are really diverse. So with Yoshi, we spoke a little bit earlier about the OT and the industrial environment, but we also have actually in the IT and corporate environment a number of devices that we don't manage today. And those devices can be, as you can see in the slides, IP cameras, they can be printers, They can be, some building management system, heating, HVAC, aquarium. I like to take this example. And so the goal of the enterprise IoT solution is really to give you visibility around those devices that you have in the IT environment and that you don't necessarily manage today, but that real example threats have shown that they can be used as a way to get inside the environment. So again, if you zoom a little bit into your corporate environment, so even though now we are more or less working from home, but in a corporate environment, you will find, of course, your regular desktop, but sometimes you can have connected lights, IP cameras, IP phones, printers, as I said previously, and it's really critical, to be able to get visibility around those equipment. So before I really dive into the solution, just wanted to present in a high-level overview what the problem is. And if we look at, the IoT attack kill chain, so this is just one of the example. I'm not saying that all the attacks will necessarily start by a scan, by showdown, for example, for those of you who are familiar with that we scan, the open internet and find, vulnerable eye cameras that unfortunately were not really built with security in mind. And also you will find the default password, which basically can be admin or root. So if you look at the this attack kill chain, it can be really easy for an attacker to scan the internet to identify a vulnerable device. And once he's able to get access to this particular device here, and it usually doesn't take much time. There are some lateral movement and scanning to really get now inside the environment where the attacker can get access to the printer, for example, who really we usually doesn't really update, even if you do. So there are, not really something that is in the same device update lifecycle that we have in our Windows 10 or Windows Server devices, for example. And so once you have access to this printer, because your corporate users are also, maybe logging in to be able to get this printer, so it's now become, possible to get the credentials, from the printer, and then other lateral movement, exfiltrate the data and communicate to a command and control server. And if you look at here, these are really some real world example, of even at NASA, they had some problem with Raspberry Pi devices. You have some IP camera also that has been used, to launch basically, internal attack against IT infrastructure. And for the CISOs, this is really one of the critical problems because you cannot really secure what you don't know. So it's really important to be able to identify those devices and also take some action to proactively prevent should an attack start by one of those devices. So the attack surface is really, basically growing. So in the IT environment, we used to manage, the servers, the desktop with, management solution like, Intune, for example, or many others. But this is really exploding now with, the bring your own device and also with the IoT devices being added. This just explode the number of devices that needs to be protected by the security team, but the number of people, basically the number of security defenders, is not exploding. So we are having more and more work to do because of the number of devices. So it's just really critical now to find a way to proactively identify those devices, take action when there are some vulnerabilities, and even contain those devices when an attack is starting from an IP camera, for example. Okay, so because we have this high number of devices, well, the adversary are also taking advantage of that. and they're really just trying to get to the easiest device to exploit. And once they have access to the devices, they will just try to do some lateral movements and to get to maybe devices that have more sensitive information, if the goal is really exfiltrate data. If the goal is just to launch a ransomware attack, this can also be a way to get a foothold in the organization. So there are really a number of challenges, as I said previously. If you speak about the printers, the IP cameras, the building management system, those may be devices that are in the IT environment, but we don't necessarily manage those devices, and they are usually unfamiliar. And this is really not, where the expertise of the IT team is. So this is really a challenge, being able to identify and find what will be the action that we need to take to reduce the risk. As I said, we are also having more and more devices coming, and more and the higher the device number per security analyst, which also means that they may not be able to, process and analyze all the alerts and all the incidents. We are seeing also some business impact in really, how the security analyst can very quickly identify, an incident, understand the incident. This is also a very important part before basically being able to remediate. Okay, so this is the problem. And now, how can the security team really create an environment where we empower the SOC with the necessary information? So it's really, and again, Frank also did a very good job in explaining that we now need to bridge the gap between the OT, the IoT, and the industrial IoT. So now it's really important to have a centralized device inventory, basically. That will give you, okay, these are the list of devices that I have in your IT environment. These are the devices that we have in the OT environment, and just verify against, the CMDB, which really should be the source of truth. But from our experience, when we conduct, for example, some risk assessment for customers, or when we enable the discovery feature of Defender for Endpoint that we're going to talk about, we usually find new devices that were not in the CMDB, for example. So for partners, this is also a great opportunity to just enable the solution. And the footprint in the IT environment is really small, but it will at least give you an option to discover all the devices that exist. And then step two, ask the question, what can we do to first update the CMDB, and two, if there are vulnerabilities on those devices in the printer, for example, finding a way to basically update the firmware. Okay, so this is really what we will bring here with Defender for IoT. You've seen this slide several times already. So in this section, we are going to talk about the Enterprise IoT, which is our agentless solution. Okay. So on the architecture principle, the solution can really be very easy to enable, specifically for customers that have already deployed our Defender for Endpoint solution. So in Defender for Endpoint solution, the P2, if you have it, or if you are thinking about deploying to your customer environment, you have some discovery feature that will just discover, what are the devices that are, in the same network. But it will not necessarily give you some information about the vulnerabilities on the IoT side of things, and also the security recommendation on the IoT devices that we have discovered. And this is really what the solution can bring to the market. So it's really very easy to deploy. You just have to activate on the Defender for Endpoint, and we will see in details in the architecture side. I have follow-up slides where we can also decide where we will enable the Defender for Endpoint endpoint, basically, that will do the discovery. So you don't necessarily need to have, for example, if you have a VLAN with 20 Defender for Endpoint solution, you don't need all the 20 devices to do the discovery. By using the tagging mechanism that we have in Defender for Endpoint, you can just identify one or two devices that will do the work. But what about the environment where you don't have, basically Defender for Endpoint deployed? And This is why we are really now thinking about and bringing the hybrid sensor approach, where the defender for endpoint agent can discover devices, but in the segment and area where you don't have defender for endpoint, you can deploy the enterprise IoT sensor, which is based on Ubuntu. So there is a main difference between the OT sensor and the enterprise IoT sensor. The enterprise IoT sensor, you will have to basically manage the operating system. So it's not served and given to you as a virtual appliance. So you will have, Ubuntu, for example, that you can use as the operating system, and then you can install the enterprise IoT on top of that. So once you have installed the enterprise IoT sensor, the configuration will be really similar when it's come to the networking. So you just connect your span ports, and then the sensor will collect the information, the network traffic, and then you will have an updated device inventory in the Azure portal, which includes data coming from the enterprise IoT, but also data coming, from the OT. And this is really our vision here, to give, a unified device inventory. And from this point, you can, just check against the CMDB if there is a delta or not. So we also have the integration with other solutions like Corelight, for example. So if you're having already a network detection response tool, NDR, or network packet capture solution like Corelight, we can also integrate with Corelight sensor to just enrich the detection that we have with our Defender for Endpoint solution. So for your customers that may have Corelight and Defender for Endpoint, this is really a great opportunity for us to not only activate the discovery feature of Defender for Endpoint, but also on top of that, having the Enterprise IoT solution deployed. Okay, so the high level architecture for the enterprise IoT, again, this is just another way to present the same information. So you will have the data source, which can be coming from our third party integrations like Corelight. But here the main data source for the enterprise IoT will be Defender for Endpoint, that will discover and scan and scan and discover, all the neighboring devices in the same VLAN or in the same network where the Defender for Endpoint solution is. And so for the other areas where you don't have Defender for Endpoint deployed, you could use the enterprise sensor. And once we have detected all those devices, we will have several engines that will help us to trigger a risk analysis, understand the behaviors. If there is a network scan, for example, from one of those devices, we'll have some machine learning that will also help us create a baseline. And if there are some suspicious communication coming from one of those devices, we will be able to detect that. And also Frank talked about the threat intelligence piece that we also have, which is really critical basically in all of our Microsoft security platform. We also, of course, have the high fidelity threat intelligence coming from all the devices that we protect. But with the acquisition of RiskIQ, this will just bring additional insight about the threats that we can detect in the environment. So once we have with the profiling, the detection, and understanding what are the devices that we have, then what are the new capabilities that we'll bring with the enterprise IoT solution. So this is what I was previously talking about. So we'll have some vulnerability, we'll have the asset inventory, we'll get the alerts. And this is also one of the use cases that we present. So let's say that, for example, you have an attack coming from an IP camera, which you don't manage today. Basically, you don't have a security solution deployed on top of that. But if there is a threat coming from this IP camera that is targeting one of your Windows 10 devices that have deployed Defender for Endpoint, so in this case, you will have an option to contain the IP camera. Okay, so how would you do that? Because you don't necessarily have an EDR solution deployed on the IP camera. So the way we are doing it is really to contain the device, which means that we'll just ask all the devices that are protected by Defender for Endpoint to no longer accept any communication coming from a specific IP address. And so in this example, the IP address could be the IP address of the IP camera, for example. So these are the things that we can do, even if we don't really manage the IP camera. If there are threats coming from this specific IP address, we can contain that and prevent any further discussion from the devices that are protected with Defender for Endpoint and this particular IP address. Okay. So this is, again, just another way to present, but very quickly, the same information. We spoke about the OT environment. So here, I just wanted to highlight again that the Defender for Endpoint is critical here for Enterprise IoT to discover what are the additional devices that we have. And of course, all this information will be centralized in the Defender for IoT portal on Azure that will give unified, IoT and OT security with asset vulnerability management and continuous threat monitoring as well. So now when it's come to the deployment, okay, so this is just, an example of the architecture. So let's say you have an open space, you have a conference room, you have a facility network, and if in each of those, network or VLAN, basically, you have Defender for endpoint add-ons, then it can discover what are all the additional devices that we have here. And if for some reason, and also if there are some areas where you don't have basically, the MD agent deployed, then you can use the Enterprise IoT to give you additional data and additional insights about a particular VLAN. Okay. Okay, all right. So I just here want to move again, very quickly. We have a lot of things to cover. I have 5 minutes left. So you're saying this already, but when we speak about and when we talk about the overall threat intelligence, we also need to have something specific and tailored to the OT and IoT environment. Okay, so we have an internal research unit that we call Section 52 that are really specialized in finding all the threats that are targeting specifically the IT and the OT environment. But we are also leveraging our extending data and signals that are coming from all the data sources that we have to just bring back this threat intelligence piece to the OT environment, but in our overall platform as well. Okay, so now I wanted to give you a very quick demo about our environment. So let me just connect or show you very quickly some of the slides that I wanted to present on the demo environment. And so if you wish, let's say, for example, to test the solution, you could definitely do that by if you have Defender for Endpoint solution deployed, and if you also want to leverage, for example, the Enterprise IoT sensor, right? So I will go in full presentation mode again. Just 1 second. All right. So once you activate the Defender for IoT, Enterprise IoT or the sensor, again in the Azure portal, these are the type of information that we find, and also based on the classification. So if this is unclassified, which means that we don't know yet which type of device it is. If this is coming from the OT sensors, it will be classified under the OT, or if this is basically coming from the endpoint environment. So this is what I was referring previously, having a unified and dynamic type of device inventory in the environment. All right, so when we now move to the Defender for Endpoint console, And so you will also have, if you go on device inventory, for example, you will have here a blade that is specifically around the enterprise IoT. So this will just give you, if for example this is an IP camera, this is an audio video device, and this is basically the devices that we will detect. But on top of that, we will give you some vulnerability information and some recommendation about those devices. Okay, so if this is an OpenSSL and we need to update this device, we will be basically able to give you that information, and we can do that without really requiring for you to install any specific software on the IoT devices itself, which can be really difficult depending on the context. So we'll just gather this information, whenever possible. You will have some recommendation on this is Windows 10 device that is not managed. We want you to, onboard on Defender for Endpoint, so which is easy. But you also have, an IP camera, IP phone that we cannot onboard today on Defender for Endpoint. But we can leverage the solution to discover the vulnerability around those devices, and also give you some security recommendation. So I also previously talked about what if there is an incident or an attack coming from this IoT device, okay, IP camera or the building management system that has been compromised. So if this is the case in your Defender for Endpoint solution, you will be able to find here the incident. Usually you will find the name will be multi-stage incident with the MITRE attack framework techniques or tactics. So, and then if this is the initial access, for example, and if you click on it, it will just give you the list of all the devices that are really acting in this particular incident. Okay, so yeah, I just want to finish here with the why Microsoft. So it's, and then I know it's almost time for the break. So it's a very easy solution to enable. It can also, if you're thinking about bridging the gap between the IT and the OT environment, solution can really also help achieve that. This is an agentless type of deployment if you already have Defender for Endpoint solution. So it can be very, very easily enabled in a customer environment. And you will start getting some additional information about the vulnerabilities and the recommendation. There is the continuous asset discovery, and yeah, you can also definitely integrate that if you are using our overall Microsoft XDR type of solution to get the signals coming from these devices as well. So I will just finish, by giving you some links. If you want to discover and learn more about our enterprise solution in particular, but the broader Defender for IoT solution. So with that, back to you, Frank.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Samba. I will come back quickly on Enterprise IoT when I speak in the last session on commercials, because the pricing is a little bit different compared to the OT security pricing. But as I said, I will come back later to this. In the meantime, also Yossi posted some announcement and some further information in the chat. So please have a look in this one. So next one, I mentioned this already this morning, with all the work we are doing with device lifecycle security, micro agent included. I also mentioned an acquisition we have done in order to do firmware scanning, and I'm really happy to have Ram Shalom in the call, because Ram is driving this initiative, and he can give you much more deeper information compared to what I briefly shared this morning as one of the use cases in the medical device. So Ram, over to you.
Thank you, Frank. Let me share my screen.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Perfect. Great. So, hi everybody.
Maybe you run in presentation mode because you have the edit mode on.
Actually, let me share it again, just in case. So. Okay.
Perfect.
Should be fine now. So hi everybody again. My name is Rani Shalom, and I wanted to discuss with you another aspect or a new capability of Defender for IoT, which we call device lifecycle security. Now, I know that Frank, Samba, and Yossi kept telling you throughout their sessions that we will discuss this new concept of agent-based security or device lifecycle security, as I mentioned, as I mentioned before, later on. So I'm happy to tell you now that later is now, and we got to this part. So let's talk a little bit about what we've seen up until now. It looks like we're all using the same type of slide. I changed the ratios here. I kind of focused more on the agent-based, but it's the same slide we're all using. So up until now, we covered what we call the agentless monitoring. Basically, what you see here is all of our deployments for already deployed devices. All of our security solutions for our deployed devices, what we call brownfield in many cases. However, there's another capability that we'll focus on now, agent-based monitoring. It's a different approach to IoT security. Agentless monitoring focuses on network-based detection. We monitor traffic on the network, as Yossi explained, and as Samba explained in the enterprise space, and we can detect based on anomalies, we can detect potential threats and alert you on them. But we believe it's not enough, and we want to now complement this solution and add capabilities from an endpoint standpoint. Therefore, we're introducing an endpoint detection and response capability that is mainly targeting new devices. You can call them next generation IoT devices. We call them greenfield in many cases. It doesn't have to be a completely new device. It can also apply to devices that are updatable, for example. Therefore, if you can update a device with new firmware that will include the agent inside, that is relevant. This approach is also relevant to such devices as well. So, like I said, the focus of the session now, over the next 30 minutes, will be on endpoint detection and response capabilities, which is our agent-based solution. But before I'll deep dive into what we do, let's take a step back and understand why we're doing it, what is changing, how is the market evolving a little bit, and what are the interesting use cases that we want to help you support. So I'm sure that many of you keep monitoring the changing regulatory landscape. We see more and more new regulations and new legislation in the US, in Europe, in many countries. And we see more emerging regulations across the globe that are trying to address cybersecurity. We see it especially in industries where safety meets cybersecurity. It is in healthcare, automotive, but also in cybersecurity for consumers. As you can see in the executive office bill for improving the nation's cybersecurity. So there's a lot that is changing, and this is actually impacting how cybersecurity for IoT devices should be delivered. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But there are other aspects that are changing the market. I decided to show you one element of it, as described, very well described by Gartner. And this is the shift in the market where IoT device manufacturers are shifting from selling devices or perpetual licenses, if you will, into actually selling PaaS, or what Gartner coined as IoT-enabled applications, meaning the business outcomes are becoming much more important, and the device itself is only an element in an overall solution that is designed to deliver a complete service around it. Obviously, the other shift in the business model that I'm referring to is the shift from perpetual licensing into recurring revenues, software as a service, platform as a service, as I mentioned before. This trend is very evident. We see it across many of our customers, where they want to offer more services, generate new revenue streams, and create new capabilities using their devices and delivering that to their customers in new and innovative models that also, of course, contribute to their bottom lines. I'll mention a few examples later on, so in case you're interested in this space, I can explain more about some ideas and some innovations that we came across in this space. But as I mentioned before, there are additional trends that are impacting and changing the IoT market. And we see it again across all the IoT landscape in all different segments, like connected cars. We see more and more cars, especially new electric cars that are becoming more and more connected. Actually, this is also being regulated under some new regulations, for example, WP29. We see smart meters as part of smart cities, smart traffic, many new use cases that are changing the way we have to deliver cybersecurity to such deployments. And why is that? First, and let's take, for example, the automotive industry. There's no longer the concept of a security perimeter. There is a concept like that in the OT space, right? Your manufacturing floors can be protected because, these are plants, and it's obviously, a building where you can actually create a security perimeter around it. Same goes for Enterprise IoT, same goes for many other deployments like that. But with cars, they're globally deployed, different countries, different places, of course, and it is no longer possible to actually put a sensor to monitor the global deployment of cars. Same goes for smart cities, same goes for so many different use cases that I mentioned. And in many cases, as I mentioned before, that Gartner identified this IoT-enabled applications concept, the move in the market to deliver IoT as a service, device as a service, for example. Again, it is not possible in many cases to deploy a network sensor at your customer's end, right? So if someone is deploying here at our Microsoft offices, let's say elevators, they will not be able to deploy a network sensor to monitor the elevators for many reasons. First, it will generate too much noise. Even if Microsoft allowed them to deploy those network sensors, those sensors will actually see too much traffic. Not just the elevator, they will see everything around. The other aspect is, as I mentioned, security. Microsoft security will not allow them to see traffic in our building, on our floors, on our networks. So It's basically impossible. And the only way to deliver security in such deployments is actually to integrate security directly into the device. So because of these trends, we are introducing now device lifecycle security, or in other words, it's an IoT endpoint detection and response capability, integrating security directly into the device itself and monitoring the device and protecting the device itself. And this approach, actually, in addition to addressing these interesting market trends and these new capabilities, this approach actually also benefit our customers and partners from additional perspective. And let's have a quick look about and discuss the additional benefits that you can get from switching to endpoint security. And I want to emphasize here, because I used switching and this is incorrect. We're not making you decide between endpoint detection and response and a network detection and response. In fact, Defender for IoT is a platform that can support, as Samba just showed before, a few slides before, we can support endpoint security, network security, and of course a hybrid between them. So it's not like you have to decide between one of them, you can actually use both at the same time. And this resonates very well with Gartner's SOC visibility triad. What they recommend to all their customers is the combination of endpoint security and network security combined as part of your SOC. In this case, as you can see on the bottom right picture, you see SIEM as kind of the representative of the SOC point of view. We talked about compliance and why endpoint security is now mandatory and becomes a critical element in several new regulations. So compliance is now also playing an important role in this decision. But there are additional benefits that I wanted to explain to you and focus this session on. First and foremost is visibility. By running on the endpoint, we have better visibility, and I'll show you exactly what I mean in just a few slides. But we can see more than what we see on the network. We also are no longer limited by network limitations, meaning if you have highly segmented network, or eventually you may need to deploy too many sensors, or complete, zero trust deployment, where there's no single point where you can monitor all the devices, as I explained in use cases like connected cars and smart cities like that. Since we're running in the device itself, we're no longer limited by how the network was architected. And I think that the most important capability that endpoint detection and response adds is the ability to respond in a very narrow scope with very razor sharp capabilities, like killing processes, malicious processes on the device itself. And I'll show you a couple of examples in a few slides again. But before we'll deep dive into these capabilities, let me explain a little bit more what is device lifecycle security. And to explain that, I want to focus on the capabilities that we're introducing as part of this framework, if you will. So let's start by pre-production. So as device manufacturers are building their devices, security by design or shift left security, there are so many marketing names around it, is very important. Your goal is to make sure that you reduce the attack surface as much as possible. You don't want to release a product with known vulnerabilities. You don't want to miss maybe hard-coded keys in the code that can later be leveraged to attack your device. So we're helping you with that, and I'll show you how. And then we move into the post-production or deployment phase. Now the product has been GA'd, globally available, and has been sold to customers. You still want to be able to provide security and make sure that this device stays safe and secured. And of course, you want to prevent any potential threats that may risk this device and eventually your customers. So in this case, we move into the endpoint detection and response phase of this security. And basically, we can provide you with continuous monitoring of events on the device itself to help with compliance, so we can alert on potential policy changes, potential configuration changes, and help you address them, as well as new vulnerabilities that were detected and other type of attacks that we will discuss. So I want to deep dive a little bit more, and I mentioned before, better visibility. So part of device lifecycle security is, as I mentioned, a piece of code that we can deliver to you as a binary, as an open source code that you can easily integrate into your devices. And we offer you, with that, much better visibility into what is going on inside the device. And just to explain again maybe the key differences between a network-based solution and an endpoint-based solution. Here are some examples of what the micro agent, the on-device security, can see. For example, what's running on the device. So full software bill of material of all the applications that are running on the device. And we continuously compare that against our CVE databases, so we can alert you on new vulnerabilities. Log4j, for example, even after the devices were released to market, we can still tell you that, well, this specific library is suffers from Log4j vulnerability. Network traffic, of course, same as the network sensor. We're less limited in the need to be able to support the specific protocols. Because we live on the device itself, we can actually see the communications before it got encapsulated in the protocol itself. But we can see also peripherals. So maybe someone connected a USB drive to the device. Maybe someone disconnected the hard disk from the device. We can detect and alert on such hardware-based events. Even connection through Bluetooth, RS-232. Anything like that, we can detect and alert on it. We can also detect local login attempts. Successful, of course, failed attempts. So we can detect brute force attacks like that, even if they are carried on-prem. And also processes. So for example, let's say there's a ransomware that runs on the device and we detect an unauthorized encryption process, right? That's easily we can tell that this is a ransomware attack. We can kill the encryption process and basically prevent and secure the device immediately. Something that is very difficult to deliver this capability through external sensors like the network sensor. By the way, this capability I didn't mention before, but I want to make sure that we covered it. This is now globally available. It was released to the market after testing it for about 2 years. So it was delivered to the market 2 months ago. So since we're still kind of looking into what's going on from a roadmap perspective, what's new and what are the new capabilities that we're introducing, I wanted to focus on some new capabilities that are part of this solution. So I mentioned first the ability to provide automatic monitoring of your software or firmware to make sure that it is as secured as possible. Like I said, there are many marketing names for it, like shift left and secured by design. So let's see how we can help you with that. What we integrated now into Defender for IoT is basically the ability to upload the firmware of your devices, or even if you have devices that you're purchasing and you can download their firmware, you can upload the binaries to our automated firmware analysis service, and we will provide you with first the full SBOM, all the software bill of material, all the files that we detected in the firmware. Of course, next to it, we will list all the known vulnerabilities. So you can see if that firmware is secure enough, or maybe there are currently issues that needs to be addressed before you want to deploy them or start to sell them. We can also analyze crypto weaknesses such as expired certificates or revoked certificates and other keys like public and private keys that sometimes we find them actually hard-coded in the firmware itself. I don't need to probably tell you how risky that is if actually your keys found their way somehow into the code. But we also run a dynamic analysis of this firmware, and we can help alert you on potential zero-day attacks, such as buffer overflows and potential threats like that. And we scan the code for backdoors and other malware that may have been picked up as part of your software supply chain, even without you knowing that some of the linked libraries is actually also uploading maybe some malware into your code. We can detect and alert you on that. I'll show you, and if we'll have enough time, I'll show you a quick demo of how this looks like. The solution is designed basically for multiple OS platforms. We already released an agent for RTOS. We released an agent for various Linux distros, Ubuntu, Debian, Yocto, and a few more. And we're now introducing an agent for Windows IoT. So everything I mentioned, the ability to monitor and protect the device for potential threats and attacks after the deployment, is now also part of your Windows IoT devices. Another layer of security, if you will, where we found potential threats that we want to help you secure, is system integrity. Basically, we want to help you protect devices and prevent boot exploits. So rootkeys and rootkits and potential threats like that, we can detect them. We can tell you that the device is not exactly the same as it was manufactured, and we found a delta or a deviation, if you will, from how the device left the manufacturer's plant and how it looks today. So there's some delta from what was produced, and that delta could be risky. Last but not least, I mentioned a couple of times, by running on the device itself, we now have the ability to respond directly, not indirectly, as in maybe integrating to other security solutions. We can now offer you a set of APIs that looks like the text is wrong here. Sorry about that. But we offer you a set of APIs that can help you respond directly on the device itself, such as maybe lock down the device to a specific list of applications, that these are the only applications that are allowed to run on the device. Maybe, like I said, kill specific processes, isolate the device itself to prevent lateral movement. So no communication whatsoever will be allowed from the device. Many different responses like that. This is something that we're still working on, and obviously we're looking for design partners to join us in this journey to help us define exactly what is required, what would make our response capabilities the most efficient and cover your use cases or plans in the future. So before the Q&A, I actually wanted to show you at least some of the capabilities that I mentioned.
We are put in time, so don't rush.
I know I see the I have a clock next to me, so
but
it's okay. All I need is just 5 more minutes just to show this tool. I'm actually using, and I apologize for that, because actually the Microsoft view of it, the integrated solution, is currently down because of some changes that we're introducing to it. So what you see here is a technology that we acquired more than a year ago from a company called Refirm Labs. A few guys from the NSA that worked very closely with the US government and actually Department of Defense, to be more exact, and have a lot of experience in these capabilities, built this tool. And now this tool is integrated into Defender for IoT as a new blade. A new functionality is part of Defender for IoT that allows you to upload the firmware, as you can see here, but the Defender is a little bit different look and feel. And you can basically upload your firmware, it will be analyzed, and we will provide you with our scan results. And I picked here just one example. Here is what you get. First, as you can see here, basically, we will analyze and provide you with the full SBOM list of all the files that we detected in the file directory. You can see all the different files that comprise the firmware, including the full software supply chain. So maybe some files that were part of the compilation and you weren't aware of them. We will let you know about all the crypto keys that we detected inside the code. Let's see what's going on here. In this case, there's one certificate. It's actually a private key, not the best approach to hard code it into your code. And actually other certificates. This one is specifically there are 2 expired certificates. Probably don't need to tell you how risky this is to actually have an expired certificate in a device that you are releasing to the market or using. There are so many man-in-the-middle attacks that can leverage this expired certificate to actually gain control of the device. And another one which is self-signed, so again, maybe sometimes risky. In addition, we provide you with, as I mentioned before, an analysis, a dynamic analysis of the code for potential buffer overflows and potential command injection attacks like that. So we can help you detect potential zero-day weaknesses in your code that later on can be leveraged by attackers to take control of your devices. So you can really deep dive into the specific analysis and find which specific function call and what is the parameter that we use to actually be able to create this buffer overflow attack. Another element that, let me see if there's interesting, let's see some of the vulnerabilities here. As you can see, we detected many vulnerabilities in the code. You can click on each and every one of them, learn a little bit more about what this vulnerability is all about, and also recommendation for remediation. What do you need to do to address this vulnerability and make sure that your code is not at risk, or remove this vulnerability from the code. Let's see, passwords. No passwords here. Probably I use this one. Yeah. So we can also, by scanning the code, for example, can detect already embedded accounts. In this case, you see a root account and a debug account. And you can see that actually in these cases, looks like it's not going to be a difficult brute force access to this device, because it seems like at least this one looks a little bit easy to be able to guess and figure out how to get to it. So probably better to address it and remove it. You can see some information here that can help you understand the weaknesses, the potential weaknesses. So I'm actually at time, according to the original agenda, and I want to make sure that everyone after me will actually have the same time, and we will not go over time. So with that, I don't know if there were, I couldn't see if there were any questions, but we can maybe spend a few minutes on if there are any questions at all, or if not, we can then go back to Frank.
Yeah, I'm just checking the questions. There are no specific questions related to your topics. There are some other questions that I will address later on. So Ran, thanks so much for this overview and also the demo of this firmware analysis based on what you said, the Refirm acquisition Refirm Labs acquisition we have done last year. And this becomes one of my favorite topics, to be honest, because I worked a lot on in the endpoint security on EDR solution, endpoint detection response. And so I'm really glad to see that we are now moving with the IoT devices in the same direction, considering that the IoT device normally is not as powerful from the processor power and from the resources, from the capacity. So the solution will look like a little bit different considering all the limitations we have. But I think that's really the right way to go. And the feedback we have received from the market yet, and the number of really nice projects having endpoint security for IoT device is really great to see. And Ran and I and with Samba, we are working already on a lot of leading edge projects right now. So really great to see this movement. And this was also a question that was in the chat. How does Microsoft differentiates from our competitors? And And seeing all these new developments that we are moving into the IoT, endpoint detection response, doing this integration with Enterprise IoT, and the integration with all of our Microsoft product ecosystem, mentioning Sentinel, Defender for IoT. That is really, I think, how we differentiate, having the whole end-to-end approach. And normally in projects, we don't like to compare feature to feature. Maybe one competitor is a little bit better on this GUI, they are better and on this functionality. In the next release, it looks different depending when a new feature is coming out. But having the overall story, and this is why we have started today with our vision, all IoT devices protected by one single solution, having all the integration with the ecosystem, having the agent-less technology where we can do a lot of things in a non-intrusive way, and also working with our new partners on the device side with device builders, what Ran just talked about. I think that is really what differentiates us. And so far, I have not seen any other competitor who have a similar approach on what Ran just talked about. I hope this answers the question a little bit about the competitive landscape, how we differentiate. Brilliant. When there are no questions, Ran, thanks a lot, and looking forward to working with you on the opportunities you just mentioned. So one further topic to discuss, which is about the commercial. Let me share my screen again. Yes, you should see my screen. The last part, commercial and partner program. So a little bit surprising. I mentioned already the pricing on Defender for Enterprise IoT is a little bit different. And I also like to mention the pricing ideas we currently have about the micro agent, what the agent-based solution, what Ran just mentioned about. Let me use and start with this one, the reference architecture and including with pricing. This is a little bit more simple reference architecture diagram compared to what Yossi has used before. That was more technical. And I like to cover the special components here. And there was also a question in the chat earlier on about the deployment models. About do we really need Microsoft Sentinel always? Yes, no. I answered the question, no. It's an additional component that can be included that really integrates really well with Defender for IoT, but it's not an absolute must. A lot of our partners, a lot of our customers in the Microsoft partner ecosystem and product ecosystem use it already because of the close integration. But you also see on the bottom here, there is Splunk, QRadar. There was a question about integration, ticketing systems, management databases, firewall, NATs. Yes, it also works. We also can do the integration into the on-premises SIEM solutions that are out in the market. There are special APIs. So let's start about the pricing component. So what, and important to understand again, it can be either deployed on-premise, it can be deployed in the cloud, or of course a mixture, the hybrid approach. A hybrid approach would mean that we have a central manager plus maybe the management in the Azure cloud. So the Azure portal and maybe the people in a factory are using the central manager. That is possible. And let's start here about the pricing and the discussion of the brownfield devices. So the brownfield devices, as Yossi also said, connected via a network switch or taps, different things. We are pricing these devices in increments of 100 OT devices, and the price is $140 per 100 devices or $1.40 per device per month. That's a subscription, and it also counts as ACR, Azure Consumption Revenue, when partners are in this call to understand what it means in the background regarding all this accounting method. There was a comment in the chat, sometimes not easy to predict for the budget. That is a fair and a correct statement. Often in larger projects, when the customers and of course the partners are not really 100% aware how many devices we have, rather than doing a guessing, we often do proof of concepts in a project. And then maybe when we do a proof of concept, either for a large network segment or for a whole factory, we know maybe the factory, we find 2,000 devices, and the company has 5 times the same factory in the same size. Then we have a good estimate of the number of OT devices. This pricing, I would say, works really well. That's a good feedback we are receiving. When they are smaller environments, mid-sized environments, we are starting. When these are larger environments, maybe the pricing, the customers expecting maybe some more partners, more discount. That's what we can do. The larger the environment is, our security sellers have an enforcement to be flexible with the pricing, but this is a list price. If you are an old CyberX partner, the CyberX pricing was a little bit different because there were a lot of different SKUs also for the hardware, for the software on the hardware, on the sensors. Microsoft has streamlined and simplified the pricing. So for an on-premise environment, this is the only pricing factor we have, the brownfield industrial pricing, $1.40 for device per month in increments of 100. So the cost, the software cost for the sensor is free of charge. Microsoft is not delivering and shipping hardware sensors. We have partner who is doing this. For example, Arrow. We have an agreement with Arrow. Arrow as a distributor can deliver the hardware. We spoke about the hardware components already. There are different ones depending on the number of supported devices. Sensors can be deployed either as a hardware appliance or completely virtual. So in a virtual environment, we are supporting either VMware or Hyper-V, our own solution. And we see more and more the trend that partners are, I said, doing completely POCs with the virtual environment, or even customers deploying it completely afterwards. But we still have a lot of customers in an environment where neither cloud nor virtualization are terms that are really liked, and so they're completely staying on premises maybe for a while. Another component we spoke about before that Yossi mentioned is a central manager. Central manager that is managing a number of different sensors, depending on how many sensors are used. We don't need a central manager. We also can dial in directly with a web interface in a sensor. Maybe this works when there's a small environment with just 1 or 2 sensors, but the more sensors we have, maybe a central manager makes sense. And this is a complete on-premise environment. Cost is really simple, as it is just one component, and the hardware sensors, as I said, not shipped by Microsoft, either companies, partners building by themselves, or source it from partners like Arrow, for example. So moving into the cloud, we have a component that, and of course, sorry, not mentioned it's here, software licenses for the central manager is free of charge. Just download, implement it, deploy it, run, go with it. No extra charge. So Azure IoT Hub is the interface to the cloud that supports the bidirectional connection from the brownfield devices to the cloud and vice versa for management or for response activity. In an earlier version of Defender for IoT, lower than version 22, there was a really small, tiny charge for the Azure for IoT Hub. Azure for IoT Hub now is in the later version, 22 plus higher versions, automatically configured if the sensor is cloud connected and also the sensor is not anymore charged for. There was a really low price. It was $25 per month for up to 50 sensors. So it was really in a larger project, a rounding error more or less. So don't worry about this anymore. The Azure IoT Hub then has an interface to the Defender for IoT, that is the Azure portal. Can be used either for complete cloud management or for hybrid. So it works in combination either with the central manager or and the Defender for IoT. And additionally, what we are doing and what our customers like in a lot of projects when they have Sentinel deployed already, or maybe consider Sentinel as an add-on later, we can give the alerts or forward the alerts from the IoT devices to Sentinel. Also, this is completely free of charge. In case we speak about alerts, there was a comment or question before in the call. What about if I insert complete raw data logs based on an API? That's a different story because this you can use more resources in Azure. In the Azure cloud, so log analytics. So what I speak here, and this is what I think 95% of most customers are doing. The alerts, it's just the alerts that are forwarded into Sentinel, because a lot of the power, a lot of the intelligence that's already in the Defender for IoT sensor that makes the patented OT security analysis. And for a lot of customers, partner, there is no need to completely send all the raw alerts to Sentinel. If you like to do, it's possible. We have the APIs, and I mentioned before, some of our partners have created already PowerShell scripts to do so. That's working. So about the pricing, and I come to Enterprise IoT pricing in another slide. Greenfield devices, the component Ran spoke about, Defender for IoT, the micro agent. The micro agent always works together with the IoT Hub and with the Azure Cloud, so it cannot be a completely on-premise deployment. Always the connection to it, and think about when you have a really scalable environment, and we are currently discussing projects like smart meter deployments and fleet management with hundreds or even millions of devices. So from the scalability perspective, we need to have the power of the cloud behind. There are two components how we are charging the Defender for IoT, the micro agent. There is a really small component device per month on a subscription basis. It's really small and really predictable because knowing the number of devices. And then there is another component you will also find in the pricing websites, which is 20 cents for 25,000 messages per month. And feedback from some of our partners and customers is who have deployed this already, and we have started project that can be a little bit unpredictable, depending really what vertical solution it is, how loud or how intensive the communication is between the micro agent or the micro agents, depending on number of devices, and the cloud. Now that's a little bit unpredictable from the budgeting perspective. If the application and the deployment of this in a vertical environment is not really well known. So Ran and I had, and Samba, we had started some discussion based on new project, whether we need to adjust this, maybe have it have this unpredictable component a little bit mitigated. So that is what it is for now, right now, but we are also considering and listening to feedback from partners and customers and streamlining the pricing. That was exactly the same what happened after the acquisition of CyberX. So we reduced the number of SKUs, and based on other feedback, we reduced the price end of November last year from $2 to $1.40. So we are dynamic in this and flexible, and we try to find out what really works best here. We spoke about this already, the different sensors that are available and the pricing. So I mentioned already, Arrow is a partner to source these components from. In this slide, you see also the contact at Arrow I really work close with, and you can use and reach directly out to him, to others. Also, when there are questions, when you're on MSSP and you need to know about meantime between failure of all the hardware components in order to bring all this as an SLA security level service level agreement into a contract. The topic Samba spoke about Enterprise IoT. I mentioned, and this was also a slide that Samba showed, the pricing is a little bit different, and there are two components of the pricing, either when you use only Defender for IoT, the discovery engine, or when you combine it and combine it with Defender for IoT, the wider Azure portal console. And this integration is also working with the cloud, because the Defender for IoT Azure portal is based on the cloud, and Defender for IoT, Defender for Endpoint is a cloud-based solution as well from the management perspective. And so this is not possible that this can be deployed in a complete on-premise environment. So the pricing, and this is an extract from the pricing website. It's a little bit cheaper compared to the OT pricing, because OT pricing, you also need to understand, we need to have the OT infrastructure in our background, in our labs, and doing some testing certification. For the Enterprise IoT, it's a little bit different, because it's based on open standards, it's based on IP, it's easier to get these devices, they are not that costly, and this is one of the reasons why the pricing is a little bit different here. It's $85 per month, also in increments of 100 monitored devices. And I mentioned before, there is also a free of charge solution if you only use the discovery engine in Defender for IoT, what Samba spoke about. It works in the plan 2. So when you have the E5 version, for example, or the EMS version, plan 2, it has the embedded discovery engine. It's not working in the E3 version. You have some functionality, so the IoT device discovery in the M365 portal. You see the IoT special alerts. If you combine it with Defender for IoT, then with the portal, then the price above applies, and you have more functionality, the security recommendation, the vulnerability management, hunting, more response, which is currently in preview. Also the combination with the Enterprise IoT Center that is currently in public preview, and a lot of things we are doing. So, but it's a great approach that a lot of our customers who are coming from the E5 endpoint side can start already with this and then expand over time. And the starting is with just 2 clicks. The discovery engine is enabled by default. Do a search run, click, and go to the device inventory, and you see the devices already. And I think it's a really, really good solution to get started and expand over time. So that's a pricing summary about the different components we spoke about. As I mentioned before, a lot of our partners are doing a trial. 30 days are free in the trial, and the recommendation always, please cancel the subscription, the trial on day 29, in order not that you or your customer get automatically be charged on the another day. So no more need to speak about this one. One of my second or third last slides, because we are coming to the end, speaking about partner opportunities. I mentioned before, we have a lot of partners in this call with different flavors or different types of partners. So I mentioned MSSPs doing the SOC from the IT, and now also jumping into the OT-enabled SOC based on Sentinel, and maybe based on other solutions, what I mentioned before. On the other side, what we call Microsoft Integrated. We are working with ISVs, we are working with process automation company, and more with device builders in the automotive side. Connected cars as an example, healthcare manufacturing, smart meter device builders, and so on and so on. That are the left and right partners. So a lot of partners are doing on the pre-sales, helping us with workshops, assessment, advertising, advisory, consulting, all in the box doing the design. Maybe these partners are coming from the advisory side. They're not the partners who are deploying afterwards. So we have partners who are really good in deploying, doing the architectural design, the technical deployment, doing the professional service afterwards, up to the managed services. And always the question is, can I as a partner also make a lot of money or make money with selling licenses? The answer is yes and no. Depends on which type of partners you are. We have so-called licensing solution partners who are transacting when a customer is ordering directly from Microsoft. These are partners who have contract with us, and they are transacting the licenses. Other partners, so-called CSP partners, stands for Cloud Service Provider partners, they have an agreement with others, they can sell licenses. But honestly, this works well in smaller customer sites, so-called SMB customers or SMC customers, small medium corporate. The largest of our customers have direct so-called enterprise agreements with Microsoft directly, and so there is not a big chance to make a lot of licensing revenue, to be honest. But our main partner, where the partner bring additional value, is in helping, supporting us with pre-sales, post-sales, all the design, deployment, operation. This is where we most likely and in normal cases work with our partners to bring additional value in. We have a lot of programs, the Cloud Solution Provider program, we have enterprise incentive programs, special rewards for technical solution area incentives, extra incentives that are coming from our group. So I work with a lot of partners also in this call and so-called Defender for IoT Risk Assessment. We are working with a lot of partners, Samba and I, supported by Yossi and the other teams on POCs. Sometimes POCs, proof of concepts, connecting the sensor to a switch port when the switch port is not powerful enough and changing the environment can take a little bit time. And therefore, we have developed something that is a so-called risk assessment program that is not necessarily that we connect something physically to a customer environment. We only need PCAP files from the partner or from the customer, or the partner is working with the customer to get the PCAP files. The partner can then implement a test environment in their home turf and reanalyze the PCAP files and get a good overview what the customer environment look like. And based on this one, we can estimate, predict, and do a calculation how big the customer environment is, about the number of OT devices. And this is often a great foot into the door in getting a project started. We are fully supporting this with the so-called ESIF and customer investment funds to support our partners, and it's not costly for our partners and really non-intrusive also as well. We're working on more programs like a pre-sales pilot program. Details are currently being worked out. If you have interest also doing POCs and such pilots that are going beyond the risk assessment program, reach out to myself, to Catherine Brooks, or to Samba. Really happy to discuss this further with you. There are more programs available. I always recommend that our partners register as a so-called partner admin link. It can be really easily done with 2 or 3 steps. So your partner alliance manager who has a close connection with Microsoft, understanding all these programs, can help you. This gives you extra incentive when you do deployment, when you do operations, when you are working with the managed environment with Sentinel, and this can give you up to 4% extra incentives per year if you are a registered partner admin link. And a lot of partners who haven't heard this before still are not using this extra incentive, and this a little bit compensates when our customers are ordering and purchasing directly from us. So a lot of partners know this already. They are really happy with this, and there are a lot of components and partner programs available. Samba and I and Catherine, we are not part of the wider channel organization that called GPS, but GPS has a lot of these programs available. We are working close together with them, but these are programs from our GPS organization, and we are more than happy to work together with you and leverage existing resources. So there are something on this website here in Partner Center, the partner portal, in finding out much more. And also when we do the recording, we will also post a recording of this session in Partner Portal for downloading and everything. So I'm the only guilty one who exceeded a little bit of time in my last presentation. I see I'm 4 minutes over. I thank you really much for your attendance here. I don't see the chat right now, so I finish my and I stop my sharing of the screen. So thanks again for for the attendance, all the speakers, Yossi, Samba, Ran in the call for this first part, this first theme, Defender for IoT. And of course, we are available and open when further questions are coming up. So I look just in the question. Can I push logs to an on-premise SOC curator that is coming from the micro agent sensors to the IoT hub? Yossi or somebody, you want to?
Yeah, so maybe I can take that. So actually, if you want to push the logs or the raw logs from the micro agent to your SIEM, you have to go through the cloud first. So if you have an event hub, so basically we will store the log in log analytics, and then from there you can push back the data to whatever SIEM you're using, whether it's on premises or in the cloud. But you cannot do that directly from the micro agent on premises to the, so there is no syslog forwarder now from the micro agent to the SIEM. So you will have to go
exactly
through the cloud and get back. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned the micro agent always is working and being managed and configured via the Azure IoT Hub. So you need to go this way, what Samba said. Yeah, correct. And yeah, another question, will the presentation slides from today's speakers available? We are sharing the recording, and I think Paulette also will, our events organizer, makes the slides available in PDF content. That's what I simply assume. But as I mentioned beginning, because we are doing some cosmetics on these slides, and I think it will take till the recording is available 7 up to 10 days. If you have urgent need, you can reach out to us, and then we can help you to make this slide, some of the slides in PDF content, make you available earlier if you have an urgent need to do so. We are flexible here. So if there are no further questions, thanks again. And don't forget, there are 2 more topics we are discussing afterwards, where Samba will be your host. The next session, starting in about 52 minutes, will be about Microsoft Defender for threat intelligence and for external attack surface management, followed then by EPM and permissions management based on the what we had the Cloud Knox acquisition. So thanks again, and have a great day. And now a good 51-minute break before we continue. Thanks all.